Have you ever had a salesperson try to convince you that their mobile network was just as good or better than one of the others? Have you had that discussion? Or is it just me? I've got a feeling it's not just me, but this is Telco Tips episode number 3, and it's all around mobile network coverage and how to understand whether or not you're getting the best deal or whether you're being told something that may not necessarily be the case or be in your best interest for your business. So there's where I wanted to go with this. I essentially wanted to frame this up the same way that I do with my clients, and there's 3 questions that I always ask my clients when we have the discussion around coverage, and it comes up on a daily basis. And you've got to understand that this is coming from somebody that can actually sell all 3 mobile networks, right? So I don't put this together, I don't frame it in such a way where it's necessarily going to lead clients one way or another. It's just about what's best for the client, what's best for you and your business. So this is what I use to get an understanding of what I'm doing for my clients and what needs to be in their best interest to get them the best deal. So the first question is all about regional travel. So it's very simply, do you travel regionally? Now, based in Perth here, a lot of people do. There's a lot of companies here that do have either all or a portion of their fleet that do travel regionally. And so the follow-up question to that is, if you are traveling regionally, how often are you doing it, and how much of your fleet is actually making those trips? Number 2 is all about international travel, which isn't necessarily about mobile coverage in Australia, but it's global mobile coverage, right? So it's, do you travel internationally? And again, if so, how often are you going overseas? And it's just to get an understanding of whether or not there's any value in looking at what's the best for the roaming portion of their usage versus what they need while they're in Australia, and whether, how important that is. So, and then question number 3, which kind of relates back to question number 1, and it's typically around customers that have a fleet of services, so 20, 50, 100, 200, 500, whatever you've got, right? And it's, if you are traveling regionally, what portion of your services are traveling? I know I touched on that on question 1, but it goes from there to, would you be open to having a split fleet? Now, what I mean by split fleet is you may have a portion of your services that are traveling regionally and they need the better network coverage. And then you've got the majority of your services that never really travel anywhere. They're just metro based, so they'll be fine on basically anybody. So that's kind of the 3 questions that I use to try and frame up with a client what is going to be the best solution for them. And then I just kind of run from there. So it's all about what is going to be right for you. So if you're a metro-based company, it doesn't really matter in reality who you're with. You could be with Telstra, Optus, or Vodafone. It really doesn't make that much difference. There's going to be black spots for some of, look, my phone's on Telstra and I have certain areas that are black spots that I know Optus or Vodafone actually work in the spots that I have issues. But it's all much of a muchness when you're in the metro areas. Yes, you get a little bit better coverage on Telstra still, a little bit. Data speeds may be a player, but if you're getting 80 meg out of your phone versus 100, who really cares, right? You're not even going to notice the difference, much less really care for the most part, right? But that's the reality around the situation, is that if you are traveling regionally, typically my suggestion for my clients is Telstra. Yes, they're more expensive. Yes, they've got their reputation as being what they are, but they do have the best mobile network regionally. And I know this is probably going to upset a few people, probably salespeople selling the other networks. But again, this is coming from somebody that sells all 3. So I don't really have a bias of which way my clients go. It's what's best for them, right? But if they are traveling regionally quite a lot, I'll typically say, look, Telstra are going to give you the best network while you're out wherever you're going. And look, I lived in Kalgoorlie for 6 months, right? And what I noticed when I lived there, and I know, again, being in Perth, there's a lot of towns around, like Geraldton, for example, is probably another good example of this, where in the town itself, the coverage is fine. Like, I really didn't have an issue. I was with Optus at the time when I was living in Cal, and I really didn't have any dramas. But traveling between Perth and Cal, and I know Geraldton and a few other areas, that's where you'll notice the difference, right? So where Telstra now, if I travel to those sort of places, which doesn't happen a lot anymore, but when I do travel to those places, I notice that the coverage that I've got now is on the road a lot better. And when I get to the town, again, it doesn't really make much difference, right? But that's the difference there. Whereas when you're in a metro area, look, I've used Optus, I've used Vodafone, and I've used Telstra since I've been living in Perth, and there's really not that much difference, okay? So if you've got somebody saying to you, even if you are staying metro based, look, you shouldn't be on this network, you should be with us because we've got the best network, or we've got this, or we've got that. Just do your research on it, but the reality is that there's very little difference. And again, there'll be pockets, there'll be black spots, but there is very little difference. But when you look at the international side of the equation, and this goes into question 2, if I've got a client, I've got one client in particular that comes to mind that he's got an amazing business and he's done so well for himself. I'm, so happy to have him as a client. So, there's a lot of things that he's done in his business that, I feel myself and probably a lot of us could learn from for our own businesses, and he's been massively successful. But he spends about 50% of his time overseas. And when he is in Australia, he's not really traveling regionally. He's mainly sort of based in Perth or Sydney or Melbourne or wherever he's traveling to, but it's always a major city, right? And so my discussion with him was, I've actually moved his mobiles to Vodafone. Now, the reason I've done that is because if you look at from an international point of view, or sorry, from an Australian point of view, Vodafone's kind of classed as number 3, right? They are. That's what they're ranked in Australia, but globally they're massive. They're much larger than Telstra or Optus on a global scale. And so what you find is when you look at the roaming packs, we'll go through it, right? So if you roam with Telstra, they have these roaming packs that are $10 a day. It gives you unlimited calls, SMS, and 200 meg worth of data per day, right? Optus, same $10 a day, same unlimited calls and SMS, but they only give you 100 meg of data. Vodafone blow them both out of the water. Basically what they've got is $5 a day, but whatever plan you've got in Australia, you use when you're overseas, right? So if you're on a plan that gives you 60 gig worth of data and unlimited calls and all that, which is, the unlimited call stuff's all standard these days anyway, it's all around the data. But if you've got 60 gig worth of data to use in Australia, you've got that same 60 gig to use when you're overseas. Now, keep in mind when you look at these, and you can go onto the various websites, the network's websites, and you can have a look at these plans, but it's not for every country in the world, right? But it is for, I don't know, it's all the major countries are covered. I think it's like 90 or something countries for most of them that use these plans. And it's all your major ones, US, UK, New Zealand, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, all those sort of major places that people are traveling to. So if you happen to be traveling somewhere that's not covered, then it kind of is what it is. It just means that there's not a massive amount of volume of travelers going to that country in relation to the other ones, right? But your main areas should be covered, or pretty well are covered. And so that's the discussion that I had with him around when he's in Australia. Coverage isn't going to be a massive issue because he's in metro areas and there's not that much difference between them, right? But when he's going overseas, there's a massive difference between using Telstra or Optus or using Vodafone. And so that's why we've moved him to Vodafone, just because he spends so much time overseas. Now, basically one of the frustrations I've got with this, and having been in telco and been out to meetings with other salespeople for a number of years, just listening to how they approach this subject with prospective clients, it's very frustrating. Comment below if you've had any of these interactions with these salespeople, is because you've got to understand, salespeople are all about hitting a target, right? And I've been there. And I used to, all of these one-liners and everything, I used to use them myself because I was in that culture of you just have to hit a sales target. And it doesn't really matter what you do to get there, just make sure you get to your sales target. So this is where things like the coverage guarantees came from, right? Coverage guarantees shouldn't even be a thing. They just shouldn't. Like, as a salesperson, if you're selling something, a product to somebody, and you're not sure that it's the best thing for them, and you're not sure that it's going to work, so you have to put a coverage guarantee in place and say things like, look, there's a coverage guarantee, so take it, try it. If it doesn't work, then you can go to Telstra tomorrow, right? And I say Telstra because it's typically Optus and Vodafone that have these coverage guarantees. I don't think I've ever seen one from Telstra because they've got their, who else are you going to go to, right? So it's typically Optus and Vodafone that have these coverage guarantees. And my outlook on that is, if you're selling a product to a client, play to your strengths, right? Sell your products to clients that you know they're going to work for. You shouldn't need a coverage guarantee, because basically what you're saying in doing that is we aren't entirely sure. And they frame it up as though we're confident our network's good enough and this is, a guarantee to make sure that you'll be confident. But you really shouldn't need it, right? Either your network's good enough or it's not. And when I look at people going to regional areas that have been sold these networks that just aren't performing for them, inevitably they've had this discussion with their salesperson, and the salesperson said something along those lines, or look, it's a no contract plan, so what's the worst that can happen, right? Take it, try it. If it doesn't work, go back to Telstra, and if it does work, yes, great, you stick with us and you save a bit of money along the way, which, again, it's all about hitting sales targets. And this is why, being in a position where I can sell all three networks, I openly say to my clients, I don't actually care which network you're with. And any of my clients that are watching this, you'll know, and feel free to comment in the below about this. Look, we would have had this conversation where you've probably heard me say, I don't actually care what network you're with. I'll give you the best deal I can from each. We'll go through the pros and cons of each. And this is part of what this is the pros and cons discussion of, yes, Telstra is more expensive than Optus and Vodafone typically. But yes, they've got the best network. Yes, they've got the best data speed. So that's kind of the trade-off there, right? Whereas Optus and Vodafone, yes, they're that little bit cheaper. No, their network's not quite as strong. No, it's not, doesn't have the data speeds as the other two, as Telstra typically. But again, you bring it back and you say, look, but you're in a metro area. So do you need to be paying 20% more to be on Telstra? Do you need the extra coverage? Do you need the extra data speeds? Or are you better off being on Optus or Vodafone, saving that extra money? And your phones are typically going to work without too many dramas in metro areas. So is it worth paying that extra amount? So that's just the discussion that you have with the client. But the coverage discussion has always been something where you look at, and having worked for Optus and Vodafone, they focus on it massively. It's one of the biggest things that they speak about internally, because it's, they talk about objection handling and this and that, and this is what they use to objection, and this is what they've come up with, right? Coverage guarantees and no contract plans, and it's basically to remove the friction for a client or remove the risk, right, for a client to deal with them, because they've got these guarantees in place and you can leave and go. But my outlook on it, and again, being able to sell all three networks probably kind of helps me in this way, but I don't care. Here's the best from each. Here's the pros and cons of each. We talk through it. What's more important to you? Do you travel internationally a lot? Do you travel regionally a lot? And then from the regional discussion, you split it off to point 3, which is about the split fleets. Now, I've got a few clients that do this. It's not massive, but I've got a few clients that do this where they do have, say, one client that comes to mind, they've got 50 mobile services, give or take, right? And there's about 10 or 15 of them that travel a lot in regional areas. So they'll go up to Karratha, or they'll go to Kalgoorlie or Geraldton and those sort of places. And so what we've done is we put that portion of services on Telstra so that those services that do need the extra coverage, the better network, they've got it, right? They've got access to it. And when they come back to Perth, it doesn't really make a difference, but they've got that better network when they need it. And then they've got, their 35, 40 services that really don't travel. They're based in their head office in Perth. They travel around Perth, but they don't actually travel out too far. And those services are actually sitting on Vodafone. So they've got the best of both worlds, right? They've got the better network on, they're paying a little bit more for the better network on the services that need it, but the majority of their services that are metro-based, and it really doesn't make a difference who they're with from a coverage point of view. There's not that much of a change. They've gone and put all of those on Vodafone because they've got the best price, or, at least at the time when we were looking at it, they had the best package and the best overall solution for them. So that's just what it's about, right? And that's why I wanted to put this out there with the coverage discussion, right? And I know that I'll probably upset a few people by having this conversation, but it needs to be had. And again, I mentioned it in my last video, I can't get around to every business in Perth and have this discussion with you and say, look, this is the reality of the situation. You're going to be dealing with Telstra, you're going to be dealing with Optus, you're going to be dealing with Vodafone, you're going to have these reps that are coming into you. And I want to frame this up for you so that inherently in your own mind, before they even arrive, you've kind of already got a pretty good understanding of where this sits. And you'll be able to look out for those little one-liners that they use, like, around the coverage guarantee, it's a no risk thing, around the no contract, it's no risk, try it out, and all of that. Whereas, again, my outlook on it is very different. It's what is best for the client, not just give it a go and we'll hope it's, again, that's my outlook. It's one person's outlook on it. I may be wrong, but look, feel free to comment below with your thoughts around it. But look, that's essentially what I wanted to run through with this. This, a little bit shorter than my other videos, but it was kind of something that is, it's a very important subject. It's something that comes up almost on a daily basis with my clients, and it's something where I know there's a lot of confusion out there, and there's a lot of these little one-liners, as I say, that are going around where it's all about the salespeople trying to hit a target, trying to hit their objective, and not necessarily about what's the right outcome for the client. So look, that's the reason for this video. But if you did get some value for it, please feel free to like, comment below, share it out. There will be a new video going up at 6 o'clock every Tuesday, that Perth time for our people over east. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel. If you do and you hit that little bell, you will get notified of the new videos as they come up. And the only other thing I wanted to really mention, and I'll probably start mentioning it a little bit more, is Aria's reseller program. So we've gotten to the stage now with our business where we're comfortable with what we have and where we are. We're able to look after our clients very well. And for me, it's not so much about just growing my business to some multi-million-dollar, like I'm not trying to be Telstra, Optus, or any of those guys, right? For me, it's about, now that I've got my business to a place that I know it works, and I know it's, the model works for my clients, I want to show other people how to do that. So we've actually just launched a reseller program. So if you're in the telco space, or you're interested in getting into the telco space and want to have a little bit of a look at it, I'll put a link below the video in the comments, and just jump on, have a look. Happy to have a chat and see if it's something that can work for you, because it was, when I was selling telco and working for these networks, I was very much in the headspace of, look, I feel like I can do a better job for this than what I can do here. I'm kind of hamstrung. I'm selling one network, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm focused on sales targets, and I feel like I can do a better job for my clients if I had the resources. I just had no idea where to begin, right? So we've started this Aria partner program now. So if it's something that you're interested in, please jump on, have a look. Otherwise, look, that's pretty much it. If you've got any questions, please shoot them through. I'll be putting up, as I say, a video every week, and if there are any questions or topics or what have you that you'd like me to cover off, drop them in the comments. I'll have a look at that, and by all means look to put together another video based on the feedback that you give me and what you actually want to see. But otherwise, look, have a great week, guys, and look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.